Thank you. Nice to be back on the stage, and this is the shortest time you will see me this afternoon, but it's my most favorite opportunity here. I have the opportunity to let you know a little bit about Karen Cook. So when you talk about Karen Cook, there's a few superlatives. So first of all, she has a career that includes 35 years as a nurse. You're going to see she has the passion that comes from having provided that hands-on care with patients and family members. She has just as much passion around employee engagement, which she'll be talking about today. She's an accomplished author. If you go out and look at our books, you'll see her name on our HCAHPS Handbook, one of our most best-selling, popular, highest-rated books that we've ever created at Studer Group. So she also knows the patient engagement side of this world. And actually, a fun fact, as Quint departs the organization, that means Karen Cook is our most tenured employee in this organization. So there isn't a part of this history that we've ever done without Karen. She's helped lead us into new directions, and she's here to talk to you today about something that's very specific that could be a great takeaway on leader rounding on direct reports. But when she leaves here with us and she goes back to her family, she's still in healthcare. She's married to a physician, and 100% of her 3 children are also in healthcare, following in her footsteps and Randy's. So please join me in welcoming Studer Group's most tenured employee, Karen Cook.
Okay, there it goes. I just love Craig. I just love a whole lot of things. I love being here with you, and I'm curious, are you really this interested in learning about rounding on employees, or are you just getting a good seat for the last session? You are? Oh, and you're so right up front. I love that. So, Nisho. What? Okay, so I always have a thing. If you can take away one thing that you learned in this next 45 minutes that we're going to spend together, then I will have accomplished my goal. So I was privileged to have lunch with our Chinese friends, of which 2 of them didn't speak English. So Nisho is hello. So you have learned a word. Now, I'm a huge fan of teach back, so you have to say it back to me, and how you'll remember it is I always think of little things in my head so I can remember things. So remember, Nisho. Okay, so you ready? Go. Yeah, see, so you've learned one thing, so you can take that away. So we have to do a quick shout out to our friends at Western Missouri who are watching this online. Everybody say hi, Western Missouri. So they're sitting in a room watching this on a TV screen, and they sent me a picture of them saying, hi, everybody. Here's the 3 things that we're going to cover over this next 45 minutes. But before we start, I sort of want to know the audience. How many of you would say that you are unconsciously skilled in rounding on direct reports? Yeah? Oh, we have some experts here. You are unconsciously skilled in round, and look at her sitting right up front. And you know, that's what top performers do. They sit right up front, they take lots of notes, even though they are unconsciously skilled. So when I was first made a leader, and you're pretty darn young, I don't know, you must have had a much better mentor than I did. When I was made a nurse manager, back when I graduated in 1980, you were made a nurse manager if you had a degree. That was the bottom line, because most of the RNs had associate's degrees. So I had a bachelor's degree, so I was made a nurse manager. I didn't have the tools or the equipment to do my job, and that was to lead. I was good at IVs. Right? I mean, how many of you can relate to that? So I asked my husband, who was a physician, he was actually an intern at that time, I asked him, I said, gosh, I've got all these really tenured staff, and now I'm in charge of them. What can I do to be a good leader? And he gave me some really good advice that is very, very similar to the advice that I learned very early on from Quint. And what he said is make it a good place for them to work. And the only way that you can know whether it is a good place for them to work is to ask them. So that's what rounding on employees really is what can I do to make this a good place for you to work? And what's important to you may be very different than what's important to you. And that's my big takeaway from rounding on employees. It's that one-on-one conversation. So I want you to have a one-on-one conversation with each other. Find a partner very, very quickly. Doesn't matter whether you know them or not. We're not going to have more than 30-second conversations. So get a partner. Everybody have one? And if you have an awkward 3, then, listen in. But try and participate. I want you to tell your partner One word that comes to mind when you think of a good leader. One word. One word to describe a good leader. Now that's very quiet conversation. So did you have it? Are you done? Okay, call them out then. You two said the same thing, so I want to hear what you both said.
Well, I said inspiring. I said example.
And now that's not the same thing.
Exactly the same thing, but I think it.
The bottom line is they said the same thing. Inspiring and example, role model. Wasn't Robert Early a role model for all of us? Yeah, he was inspiring and a role model. Same thing. Okay, what else? Accountable, fair, adaptable, flexible, engaged, visible, passionate, good listener. Think about every word that I just repeated that you said. Every word is rooted in communication. Every single one of them, when we think of what good leaders are, it's rooted in communication. So when we think about it, for me, my husband said to me, the best leader he ever had was interested. And I find that a really interesting word. So as a leader, we want to be interested. We want to be interested in how do we find out whether we're really hearing what's important to our employees is we got to ask them. When we look at these exact same slides and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've seen this 10 times already, what I want you to do is look at it just a little bit different. I want you to look at what's the goal when we're talking about leader rounding on staff. What's the goal that you want to accomplish? Is it to reduce turnover? Is it to increase employee engagement? It's going to be one of those two. That's why we do the tactic of leader rounding on staff. One of those two goals. Now think about it, your organization, what that's going to mean. So when I look at it, I look at if I'm going to reduce turnover, specifically involuntary nurse turnover, I'm going to look at if I can reduce turnover and achieve my goal, I'm going to keep 124 nurses from having to go through the process of interviewing and finding a new job. Put a face with the number no matter what that goal is. For this particular one, you're going to keep 91% of your employees from being disengaged in their work. Put a number on what would that look like. How many people's lives are we talking? So when you see these slides, don't just look at them and think of them as a model for a framework. Think about how you can use it back in your organization. We talk a lot about rounding, and oh my gosh, there's all sorts of different types of rounding, and it's always interesting to me when I go to organizations how I'll be talking about nurse leader rounding on patients, and pretty soon somebody's talking back to me with some specifics like around hourly rounding. So the first thing we have to do is make sure we're on the same page and we're defining. Leader rounding on staff is where we're going to be spending our time in this session, and also on 90-day new hires. But there's all different kinds of rounding. Here's what rounding is not. It is not management by walking around. Even though when you're out there with your staff, you're asking questions like, hey, do you have the tools and equipment to do your job? What's going on today? Anything I need to know about? That's rounding too, but it isn't that one-on-one conversation that we're going to be talking about. It's not focused on what's wrong. Gosh, we're good at that. We are so good at noticing what's wrong. What rounding is about is noticing what is right and making them come prepared to have that conversation with you as their leader about what's right. That is the main reason why we round, no matter what type of rounding, is to focus on who can I say thank you to and who can I reward and recognize. So it's when we think about defining it, this is my favorite definition. It's a proactive approach. And when you're talking about rounding, make sure you use that term. It's a proactive approach to building trust and building relationship and gathering feedback on what you can do to create a better place to work, which is your job as the leader. And so the question is, do you have the tool and equipment to do your job? And that's to lead. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I firmly believe this is one of the first strategies we have to employ if we want to have that engaged workforce that you've been hearing about. This is the NDNQI data, and we can run this numbers, and yeah, you know, Gallup's important. It's important to have national numbers, but pull them at your organization. So take these slides and replace it with your story, your data, and look at what % of your employees would you say are actively disengaged. And even though we do need to round on those people, we're going to focus our time on the employees that we have opportunity to move. Like Mr. Early said, there's going to be some we're not going to be able to move, but that doesn't mean we don't try. When you do this, and you really do it in a structured, organized way where every leader's doing it consistently, following the same process, the same approach, and reporting themes and trends up, you're going to see improvement. Now, are you going to improve at the same pace the Mayo Clinic did? I can't guarantee that. Look at every one of those hospitals, the amount of improvement that they saw in 2 years with rounding on employees. This is where you start. What we know is that if we can increase the number of employees that are actively engaged and decrease the disengagement, we're going to see less safety issues, we're going to see less call-ins. And think about, what I really want you to do is you put faces to these numbers as well, because what you're going to find are those employees that are showing up on, they didn't follow the CLABSI bundle, they were audited not washing their hands, they didn't do their hourly rounding, they didn't mark it up on the board. Those people that aren't following the processes, I promise you that you're going to see them showing up in your low performer, on your high, solid, low, and you're also going to see them on every one of the lists that we keep. So when we look at we're going to be safer, we're going to have less call-ins, and we're going to have less quality defects if we increase our engagement. What I also think is interesting is I get called in a lot to talk about HCAHPS and how we can improve our revenue through value-based purchasing. And the first thing that I'll tell them is, value-based purchasing is important, but that money that we're going to lose through our penalties and even through the readmissions and the hospital-acquired penalties is nothing compared to looking at your turnover and looking at your engagement. So I love this slide from the VHA because what this shows is mortality and length of stay are both directly impacted when we retain our good employees. And you want to talk money? By reducing your length of stay by 1.5 days, by reducing your turnover, that's going to get the attention of your CFOs. So what we know is retained staff, better patient care. So they take better care of the patients when they're there. That's going to be reflected in your HCAHPS as well. What we also know is that it reduces turnover. Take these slides that you've gotten here today, this one included, and put your numbers on it. I think it's something that we don't do enough of, is we don't put the return on investment for focusing on these strategies. Look at your safety culture. This is going to be the big buzzword, is the safety culture of the organization. So start tracking it right now and correlate it straight across to where your engagement is. I love this one because this one is Lucian Leap, who's considered to be the father of safety. What his organization has given us the research on is that if we have a higher level of engagement, meaning your employees can answer these 3 questions more positively, you have a safer culture. So the organizations that used to think this was soft and fluffy, like Quint said yesterday, there is a hard business case for reducing turnover and increasing engagement. When I first started working with Quint in 1999, every CEO in the country is asked to fill out a survey, and they get a very strong return rate. Back in 1998, patient satisfaction wasn't even on the list. Now it is. But you know what's still missing on that list of the top 10 things that are important to CEOs is employee engagement. When we've got all this data that's saying we're safer. So it has to be hardwired first. Look at the questions. We have a very structured approach to the questions that we ask. If you're a leader in the organization that is a partner with the Studer Group, you follow these questions. So look at these 3 questions and look at the correlation right there with Lucian Leap's study. And this is where the questions come from. Now, my favorite 2 questions, you're going to take out 2 things, I hope, today, is nicho. And you're also going to take out that every employee in the organization has a one-on-one conversation with their leader, and the leader says to them, what can I do to make this a better place for you to work? Question 1. And question 2 is, what can I do to be a better leader for you? And again, very personal, and I'm hearing back from them. When you talked about your words to describe your best leaders, you're going to know what they're going to consider to be a best leader. Here's my example of rounding on employees. I reported to Quint directly for the first probably 6 years of working with Quint, and he rounded on me. We did it virtually because we didn't live in the same city, so he would call. But it would be on my calendar that he'd be rounding, and I knew the questions, so it really got to the point where I was filling out the rounding log ahead of time, and I would send it to him with all the questions answered. I would send it to him ahead of time. Why? Because we were able to do our rounding in about 5 minutes, and we spent the rest 15 minutes talking about baseball or grandkids or kids or whatever it was. So for us, that was that personal connection. So I just got to tell you this quick story because this happened 10 years ago. My daughter's 28, and she was graduating from high school, so she was 18. And Quint said, hey, Casey's graduating from high school. And I said, yeah, she is. She's a dancer, so she's auditioning in college. She's auditioning for the dance team. He goes, oh, yeah, when is it? And I said, oh, May 19th, something like that. And he's like, oh, cool. We went on talking about the rest of the stuff. So about 3 weeks later, she graduates, she auditions. It's like May 20th, and I get a call from Quint. And you know, when Quint calls you, you see it, and you're kind of like, what'd I do? And he said, he answers his phone, Karen, Quint. Can't you just hear him? Like, that's exactly what he did. I remember it like it was yesterday, and he said, Karen, Quint, how'd it go? And I was like, oh, well, and I started going into this litany of how it went wherever I was working those last couple of weeks. I was just like, I don't know what he's talking about. So he goes, no. How did the audition go? Did she make it? And I said, oh, yes, she did. She made it. And he goes, oh, cool, I was just checking. Just want to check in on you. Hangs up. About 2 days later, she gets in the mail this big basket of bath salts and lotions, purple ribbon, all this stuff. And the note said, congratulations, Casey. Thank you for sharing your mom with us over the last 5 years. I remember that. I still get goosebumps. Because to me, I'm not telling you have to go out and buy a bunch of lotions and stuff for your employees' kids. What I'm telling you is care. Know what is important to them. And if you don't use a log and fill it out, do you think he remembered it? No. He wrote it down on the log and handed it to his assistant who gave him a teaser to call Karen and ask. That's rounding on employees, developing that relationship. And what he says, if you skip the employee, all of them, then you're making a mistake. So how do we round on direct reports? How do we do it? Here's some guidelines. Who rounds, as we know from the Gallup surveys and the Gallup information, is employees leave because of their relationship with their direct supervisor. So who rounds is who has hire and fire responsibility. How often? If you have less than 40 direct reports, the guideline, and I'm going to say this is guideline because every culture is different. The guideline is one-on-one conversation with every single employee, not just the ones you like. Every single employee, you round on them at least once a month. If you have between 40 and 80, then it's every other month, and if you have more than 80, then it's once a quarter. You round with a log. You tell the staff why you're rounding. You can give the log to them and say, these are the questions that I'm going to be asking you. So you come prepared. What we do know now that we're able to correlate data, but with publicly reported HCAHPS data, what we do know with our partner hospitals, this is Kaiser's work, if you round, and Quint mentioned it yesterday, if you round at least monthly, the percentage of your engagement goes up incrementally compared to if you never or if you round once a month. So think about, is it worthwhile to do? How do you round on direct reports? You follow the log. Why do we follow the log? Give me some reasons why we follow a log. So I'm going to ask the unconsciously skilled person to repeat what she just said. So for consistency, so how many leaders do you have in your organization? If you aren't following a structured log, you're going to get inconsistency and you're going to get variance within your leaders. And that's going to show up in your employee engagement. So I also heard over here track themes. I also heard you guys said something. What'd you say? You said consistency as well. Why else do we use a log? So we can communicate back and we can remember what they said, just like Quint kept notes. And then, what'd you say? So collect the data. We're going to be able to theme. We're going to look whether we've got issues in one particular partner or one particular department, or whether we have issue with the whole organization, because we're going to roll up the themes from rounding to our senior leaders. How do you think Mr. Early is able to keep track of 6,000 or 12,000, however many he said he had, 12,000 employees, is rounding through the leaders, the direct reports, and rolling those themes up. It also reminds you for the next time, just the example that I gave for Quint, and ease of summarization. So you can't remember. You think you've got 50 employees, you're not going to be able to remember all of those things. It also is going to give you the trends for thank you notes. One of my sons, he graduated from college with a degree in biology and was supposed to go to medical school. He spent another year getting a degree in chemistry and was supposed to go to medical school. Why? Because that's just what he was supposed to do. His daddy pushed him in that way, and he had the grades, so he's supposed to go there. What we didn't really stop and look at is, did he have the heart? Did he really want to do it? And after a few beers, I'll fully admit it, after a few beers, he came home one day and told us he didn't want to be a doctor. And we were devastated by that, because that was the plan. You know, people say, oh, you didn't push him into it. And we're like, yeah, we did. We absolutely did. We pushed him in that. Our middle son, if he got a C, we were like, sweet, Tanner, good job. Tanner's the super happy one. But Ryan, you got a B. It's like, ooh, Ryan, that might impact your ability to get into medical school. No, we pushed him straight up into it. And then we're worried about it. And so we said, oh, come home, do whatever you want, be a landscaper, live in our basement. We didn't know that he was going to be there for 2 years. And so, yes, he was. So I finally called CEO of one of the organizations, and the CEO is in this room. And I said, listen, my son could be a great doctor. I know that he's going to want to be a doctor. And if he could just get into an organization and work in a really high-performing culture. So they gave him a job. Now, he had to interview, and he had to get the job, but I got him the interview. And believe me, he was well prepared with his peer interviewing questions, because he's going to get that job. I'm going to get him off of my payroll and onto theirs. So he goes down. He works in this hospital as a transporter. And they rounded on him. And he got called into the COO's office, who was responsible for the transporters. And they said, Ryan, we just want to let you know that you have been mentioned in our employee rounding. You have been mentioned by the nursing units. 3 different units have mentioned the great job that you're doing in your role as transporter. And the COO said, I've heard that you're considering going to medical school, and you're maybe getting some hands-on experience and thinking about it. And he said, we just want you to know that we support you. We think you'd be great in the medical field. And guess what? He decided to go to PA school. He didn't go to medical school, but he applied and he went to PA school, and he's working in Topeka, Kansas right now as a PA. They were able to do in about 4 months what we weren't able to do in 5 years. And how they did it started with rounding on employees. So these thank you notes, these reward and recognition that you may take for granted, they can impact people's lives. Had he not been mentioned in rounding by those nurses, he might not have been called in so quickly into that COO's office. So I am forever grateful from a personal perspective for employee rounding. Be specific with your thank you notes, not generic. Specific on what they said. That's how you build that teamwork between departments. Look at some fun ways. These are supply chain superheroes. If this organization in Louisiana, if you're mentioned on either rounding or on a thank you note or a discharge call, you're mentioned some way, you're called down to put on the superhero, which reflects their values, and they take your picture and they're posted on the superhero wall. Do fun things with rounding on employees. Don't just keep those logs and keep those for your knowledge. Summarize your themes on a stoplight report so everybody can see and hear what you're hearing. It doesn't have to be fancy to be hardwired. This is Blessing Hospital, and this is a nurse manager. This is a wall right on the middle of their med-surg unit, and after she rounds on her employees, she comes out and she writes the themes for everybody to see. It doesn't have to be fancy with your stoplight report. What your stoplight report says is, here's what we heard from the employees that I've rounded on. These are the things we've done based on what you've told me. Here's the things that we're working on, the yellow, and here's the red. These are the things that we cannot do, and here's why. And I'm always shocked at how many organizations I go to that say they're doing rounding on employees, but when I ask to see their stoplight reports, they aren't there. So when you round on your employees, roll up those themes. This doesn't take long. It takes how long to come out and write up on the wall? But everybody's looking at it, including your patients and their families, because I would sit and watch people read these. So here's some tips for rounding. That rounding time, that one-on-one conversation is their time. We're not having that 10-minute conversation to look at how we can manage their performance. We're not looking at what they can do for us. We are 100% looking what they can do for them. If you want to add a custom question, add one or two, but make it about what's going to be important to them to make it a better place. For your new hires, the very same questions, but standardize it. At 30 days, if we're tracking 30 and 60 and 90 and 6 month and 1 year turnover, we should have rounding schedules that align right with them. 100% of our new hires within their 30 days, here's our turnover, here's our rounding schedules. With your new hires, ask them, who can I reward and recognize for helping you have a good orientation in your first 90 days? One organization gives pass it on coins. They give them to every new hire. And what they say is, over the next 30 days, give this coin to someone who's helped you in your first 30 days. And then that person in the rounding conversation is rolled up. And those people are recognized by the senior leaders. So they get that pass it on coin. Ask them, what did we say in our recruitment that we haven't delivered on once you started working here? It's a very, very powerful question. And just think about if every one of you asked your new hires those very same questions and we rolled those themes up to the senior leaders. Look at how much intel, how much information we'd have. So do you have to round on these people? And if there's anybody named Debbie out there, I apologize. Do we have to round on these people? Everything is negative about these people. These are the people that unless you standardize and track 100%, these are the people that'll get left out. These are the people that we won't round on because it isn't comfortable for us. So I put in just some tips that you can take back home and use these for rounding on these employees. The bottom line, 100%. And yes, we're going to be able to move some of these negative people. Because why are people negative? And many times it's because they feel like they aren't listened to. It's almost the exact opposite of what y'all just got through telling me were your best leaders. What about these people? They say things like, we're short-staffed. They're always giving you things that are negative. With these people as well, tell me more about that. Don't argue with them. Tell me what's making you say that. Ask for some real specific things. But this, during their employee rounding time, is not the time to solve the issue. You can set up some time later to solve that particular issue, but it's not now because you want to bring them back to what's working well. I want to hear about all these things that you want to bring to my attention about our opportunities, but let's stop right now and go back to what's working well. Then we got those that are just demanding and they want all kinds of stuff that they ain't ever going to get. But those people, again, those are the people that you want to say, I'm hearing you say that this is what you would need to make this a great place to work. Is that what I'm hearing? That's the question I'm going to ask back. I want to make sure I'm hearing what they say when they're stamping their feet and asking for parking garages. I want to make sure that that's the one thing that's going to make this a better place for them to work. Because they're going to change. And their responses, those negative people are going to come back with realistic things that's more personal, more applicable to them. And then when they give you the, I don't think this, but everybody else does. So here's the bottom line with this, or just kind of the rest of the story. Quint told you that 17 years ago, we met here in Orlando, and I sent him a note that said, I want to come work for you, right? The real story is that I sent him a note that said, Pam Beitlich and I want to come work for you. And he sent me back a note that said, I would love to talk to both of you, but I'd like Pam Beitlich to contact me herself. And his message was, why are you carrying her message for her? So he has not changed from day one. That when they bring this, I'm hearing this, everybody else thinks it. I want to hear what you think. This is your time. So make sure they know this is not about everybody else. I appreciate what you're bringing to me, what everybody else thinks, but right now, for this 10 minutes, I really care about what you think. So really keep bringing them back to point. Let's get in groups of 3, sort of. We're going to practice this, okay? Get in groups of 3-ish. If you're 2, stay with your 2, but if you're a good 3, sort of divide up into groups. We want you to be able to practice it. What I want you to spend the next 30 seconds doing is the person of your either duo or trio that has the shortest hair. Sorry, guys. The shortest hair. You are the leader. And you are introducing to your employee, leader rounding on employees. I would like you to take 30 seconds to tell them, in your own words, which is teach back, what you're going to start doing, why you're going to start doing it, what they can expect, and what you expect back from them. So we'd like you to take about 30 seconds and explain that to them. Go. I loved what you said. Would you come up and say it? Come on, force and tear. Okay, what's your name? Oh, well, Kim, no wonder. Kim's one of our most wonderful CEOs. No, I'm forced and tearing her, but this was not set up, and I did not know this was Kim sitting there. I didn't recognize you till I looked at your name badge. But all I did was eavesdrop, and I'm a most excellent eavesdropper. So I eavesdropped and heard her say it. And Kim, could you just lean into my microphone so Western Missouri and everyone else listening, could they hear sort of-ish what you said?
I said, I think. I want to take a few minutes to explain what leader rounding is in our organization. I will meet with you every month, and this is an opportunity for you to let me know what I can do better as a boss for you. This is a time for you to let me know how we can be an better employer, because I want this to be the best job you ever had. So let me know what we do well, what we can do better. If there's a coworker that's made a really difference in your life, then this is an opportunity for me to thank them on your behalf. And I want you to feel comfortable to let me know what's working well and what isn't working well, because I'm going to work really hard to fix that.
I love you.
I love you too.
Do you want to work for her? Thank you. Thank you so much. And how did you feel when she said that conversation? So meaningful. Like I could tell she really meant it. How did you feel? Comfortable, appreciated. 69% of our employees say that they are not recognized. They're not even noticed at work. So what if 100%, I'm not talking 90%, I'm not talking the people that you like, I'm not talking a few of your employees, the ones that are working days, I'm talking about every employee. Every employee had that type of conversation. And then they followed up with that structured approach. And then the feedback that they gave you in those sessions, you heard come through at your most senior level. Wouldn't that be a better place for us to work? It would. There's 4 elements. One is you got to be prepared. You got to let your employees know these are the questions that we're going to be asking. I would ask that you come prepared. And the reason that I think this is really critical is they're going to come prepared with complaints. They're going to come prepared with things that they want you to improve. And we want them to start thinking about who do you want to say thank you to? And when I round with Craig, I give him a list. I'll fill it out and I'll say, I want you to say thank you to Lisa Reich, who spent time reviewing a PowerPoint presentation that I had prepared for one of her partners. Clay Linkus spends so much time making sure that I'm prepared to go to his partner, and I want Craig to say thank you. And he'll send him a thank you note and say, Karen said. This is how we build that culture of engagement. So think about, are you doing it? Are you really doing it? Are you doing it to the level that is structured, or are you walking around? How's it going today? Do you have the tools and equipment to do your job? Anybody you want me to say thank you to? Which you're doing that again on your time. You're interrupting them, and they aren't prepared. They're going to look around, and they're going to say, oh, yeah, I want you to thank Jeff because Jeff did this today. But we want them to give thought to it. So be prepared. Have you reviewed what they said the last time so you can be prepared coming into this conversation? Use your log. It will keep you structured. It will keep you organized. Take all of your employees. I had 60 people that reported to me, and I would sit and check off as I rounded on them because I knew where then I had the opportunity to start. Follow up with your stoplight. Roll that report up to your CNO, to your CEO, so they can, your COO, whoever you report to. And if you're one of the senior leaders, ask for it during your monthly meeting so you can get that information and stay informed. So senior leaders, who should they focus on? You follow the exact same process, your direct reports and the exact same guidelines, and then you also round on those areas that your departments serve. So senior leader rounding, this is for visibility. It's the exact same reasons. Why do we do it? We want to keep you out and visible and knowledgeable. Senior leaders, if you're going to be out in the departments and the areas in which you serve, ask for a scouting report back. And if you are a manager or director of a department and your senior leader is going to be rounding in your department, fill your scouting report out. And this is, again, another tool that we've given you on your app. Why? Because you want them knowledgeable about your area, one, but you don't want to be caught off guard. When your senior leader, when my CEO would round in the area, in my areas where I was, Kim, like if you were rounding in my area, I would want to make sure that you knew exactly what was going on because I don't want to be blindsided by an employee saying to the CEO something that I didn't know about. Because it's going to put the CEO then in an interesting position, or the senior leader, whoever. It's going to put him in either the position of being a hero, where they're solving the issue, which undermines your accountability and credibility, or it's going to put them in the position where they're going to have to snap their head and look at you like, why didn't I know about this? Scouting report is one of the most valuable tools that you'll take out of here to prepare your senior leader to round in the area of which you're privileged to lead. So if you're a senior leader, create a master schedule so they know when you're coming so they can be prepared. Now, that you can walk around, you can still be visible in the areas, but when you're doing departmental senior leader rounding, be very structured in the approach. Why? Because that's consistency. Our apps give a lot of examples on how this is going to be accelerated and make things easier for you. And I really hope that you'll take some time, if you haven't yet, to get a demo of our My Rounding from our team that is here. You're going to find it's going to make it so very easy. That's a summary of rounding on employees. It is, I feel, one of the best strategies. It's where you should start. Think of the number of people that report to you. Think about that one-on-one conversation. Think about the type of leader that you want to be. Do you want to be interested? Do you want to be inspiring? Do you want to be consistent? Do you want to be fair? Do you want to be flexible? Do you want to be interested? And how we're interested in our employees is we find out what's important to them. What can I do to be a better leader for you? And what can I do to make this a better place for you to work? If we do that consistently with every one of our employees, we're going to make healthcare better. Thank you.